You know, every so often you come across a story in modern history that just seems, well, backwards. Today, we're going to dive into one of those, the incredibly close and kind of baffling bonds between Taiwan and Japan. It's a relationship that really seems to defy all the usual rules, especially when you look at how it all started.
I mean, think about that for a second. What if the country you felt closest to was the one that colonized you? It flips everything we think we know about history on its head, right? But in poll after poll, when you ask people in Taiwan which country they feel the most affinity for, the answer is, overwhelmingly, Japan, the very same nation that ruled them for 50 years. How on earth is that possible?
And look, if you want to see just how deep this feeling goes, you just have to look at this number, 20 billion yen. That's the staggering amount of money the people of Taiwan, not the government, the people, donated to Japan after that devastating 2011 earthquake. That was more than any other country in the world. This is clearly more than just politics. It's personal. And to really get it, we need to rewind the clock.
To unravel this really surprising friendship, we've got to go way back to the beginning, a moment of frankly deep national trauma and a huge sense of betrayal.
Wow. You can just feel the complete despair in those words, can't you? See, back in 1895, China's Qing dynasty lost a war with Japan, and as part of the deal, Taiwan was basically just given away, handed over. This quote from a local official at the time just perfectly captures that feeling of being totally powerless, thrown away by their own motherland.
And this wasn't some peaceful handover, not by a long shot. The Taiwanese people were not about to be pawns in someone else's game. They fought back hard, even formed their own short-lived republic. The initial Japanese takeover was brutal, it was bloody, and it cost thousands of lives. It was exactly the kind of violent, oppressive history you'd expect from a colonial conquest.
Okay, but here's where the story takes a really sharp and really complicated turn. Because those 50 years of Japanese rule, they weren't just about oppression. They were also about this period of intense, forced modernization. Let's call it the price of progress.
This, right here, is the central paradox of the whole Japanese era. On the one hand, yeah, you had 2 straight decades of armed uprisings and policies designed to stamp out Taiwanese culture. But on the other hand, Japan built a railway connecting the entire island. They pushed school attendance up to over 70%, and life expectancy nearly doubled thanks to public health work. So, the key thing to get is that Japanese rule was, at the same time, both oppressive and transformative.
And you can see this complexity in stories like that of Yoichi Hata. He was a Japanese engineer who designed this enormous irrigation system that turned barren land into some of the most fertile farmland in Asia. But the thing that makes him a hero in Taiwan even today, he insisted on paying his Taiwanese and Japanese workers the exact same wage. I mean, that was unheard of. It's this incredibly rare story of a colonizer who's actually revered by the colonized.
But you can't forget that all that progress came at a huge cultural cost. Near the end of their rule, Japan pushed something called the Kominka movement, which was basically an all-out effort to erase Taiwanese identity and make everyone Japanese. This quote, it just gets to the very heart of that experience. This feeling of being split in two, exhausted from living a double life.
And then, 1945, everything changes. Japan surrenders, World War II is over, and 50 years of colonial rule come to an end. Now, this should have been a moment of pure, unadulterated joy for Taiwan. But instead, it turned into a bitter liberation.
I mean, just try to picture this scene in October 1945. There were genuine celebrations in the streets, people waving flags of the Republic of China, welcoming soldiers from the mainland. After feeling like what they called orphans of Asia for half a century, they really truly believed they were finally going home. But that hope? It just evaporated, almost overnight. The new government from mainland China, the Kuomintang, or KMT, was seen as deeply corrupt and totally incompetent. Now remember, the Taiwanese were used to the Japanese, who were strict for sure, but also very orderly. So for them, the chaos, the cultural misunderstandings, and the complete economic collapse under the KMT, it was a profound and shocking disappointment.
And to put that into perspective, in just 2 years, the price of rice, the most basic food there is, shot up 400 times. Life became completely unbearable for the average person. This wasn't just a bit of bad management. It was a total breakdown of society.
And all that tension just exploded on February 28, 1947. It started with something small, a government agent hitting a woman selling untaxed cigarettes, but it spiraled into an island-wide uprising. The KMT's response was swift, and it was horrifying, a massacre. The 228 incident, as it's now known, became a foundational trauma for modern Taiwan, wiping out thousands of its best and brightest.
So this incredibly painful history is really the key to understanding everything that came next. It created this unique filter through which Taiwan started to see its past, both the Japanese era and what came after. It shaped its collective memory, and it put it on a new path to modernity.
You know, so much of that Japanese era is still baked right into the fabric of modern Taiwan. And it's not just the old buildings you can still see. We're talking about the legal system, the structure of education, even social habits like queuing up and being on time. There are even common words borrowed from Japanese like bento for a lunchbox. Japan didn't just rule Taiwan, it fundamentally re-engineered it.
And that legacy brings us right up to the present day. It really helps us understand the powerful modern ties that bind these two societies so closely together.
That historical familiarity created the perfect soil for Japan's modern soft power to just flourish. You know, from anime and J-pop to incredible food and fashion, the cultural connection today is just immense. For younger generations in Taiwan, Japan isn't remembered as a colonizer. It's seen as this super cool, friendly neighbor. Just look at these numbers. Before the pandemic, almost 5 million Taiwanese people visited Japan every single year. That's more than a fifth of the island's entire population. It's this massive, friendly exchange that just speaks volumes about the level of comfort and genuine affection between the two peoples.
So, here we are. We can finally solve that paradox we started with. This widespread pro-Japanese feeling in Taiwan? It's not some strange affection for colonialism. Not at all. It's a much more complex feeling, born from comparing two very different ruling experiences. The dual legacy of the Japanese era, with all of its pain, was suddenly seen in a new light after the absolute trauma inflicted by the KMT.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? I think it's that history is rarely, if ever, a simple story of good guys and bad guys. The relationship between Taiwan and Japan shows us that sometimes the most complicated and, even the most painful shared histories can end up laying the groundwork for the most profound and unexpected friendships.